Did you know that it doesn't matter what size company you have, you can always be more equitable, inclusive, which in turn will make you more diverse? Last week, we talked to Julia Becker Collins about some of the strategies she uses in order to keep a very diverse workforce. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, I invite you to do that. But not before you listen to this episode with my sister, Laurielle Noel, and me.
Welcome to Diversity Dish, where we're dishing on everything diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice related. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and we're bridging the gap between what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. Those individual experiences that are often ignored or simply dismissed. Sometimes I'm dining alone, sometimes I'm dining with friends, and sometimes I'm dining a la carte. No matter how I'm dining, it promises to be delicious. Let's dig in.
My sister and I came across the story of this young Black woman who said that she had been racially profiled at Smith College in Massachusetts. Although our conversation stems from that story, we are in no way, shape, or form doing full commentary on what has happened at that college. We do not have enough information for that, but we do have enough information to be able to pull out some themes that are relevant to other companies and other institutions of higher learning. And those are the topics that we'll be discussing in our conversation today. All right. Hey, Lori. It's always good to have you here. I think you're a big hit with the listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe because I'm your sister.
It could be that. I don't know. We have this kind of synergy that everybody's kind of vibing with. So it works. It works for me.
Great. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So that's why I wanted to have you on today as we talk about. So you sent me this article about this young lady who's attending Smith College and who apparently felt that she had been racially profiled for being in a certain area of the college, right? And then you sent me the other article from CNN. So the first article was from the Daily Mail, which is in the UK. And I don't know, I feel like it's a tabloid, but then the other article was from CNN, which also talked about what happened with this student and what's happening on that college campus, but not just that college campus, but different college campuses across the country. So I thought it would be good if we just kind of went into talking. Well, we could start with this particular situation, but then we could kind of talk to our thoughts and experiences when it comes to reporting about incidents and things that happen, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with this article. So this article is this young lady. Her name is Omu. I hope I'm saying it properly. Omu Kanute. Omu Kanut, and she was sitting in the lunchroom because she had access to this area that had been cordoned off for some student activity, some outside activity, and she had access. And so she was sitting there and she was reading, and a janitor apparently
eating
lunch, right? And a janitor apparently saw her and called police, campus police, and the campus police came and they, questioned her. And then she felt a certain way about the exchange, right? I think that there was actually a video that she took of the exchange, but she felt a certain way about the exchange and she posted it on Facebook as, look at, how this is going. People are racially profiling me. I can't even eat my lunch quietly. Just, people coming and bugging me. And then, so after that went kind of viral, people got really annoyed. The school had a knee-jerk reaction. Oh my gosh, let's do
school president.
Yeah, let's do some training. Let's do this, let's do that, or whatever. And then, I don't know, was it a few years later?
I believe it was this new article came out a few years later. I believe it resurfaced because somebody resigned from their position with the school, citing racial, I guess, discomfort as a white woman. She felt that she was in a racially hostile environment that began with this incident of the Black woman being profiled while eating lunch.
Right.
Mhm.
And she felt that way because now all of a sudden there's all this training that everybody has to do, and she didn't feel that she needed to do that or something. I don't know.
And I think, to be a little bit clearer, the training wasn't, when you say everybody, I think that's one of the issues.
Mhm.
The training was specific. I can't say I know for sure, but it wasn't everybody. It wasn't like all the employees of the school or
Right.
all of the security. I think it was specific. It may have been specific to the people who maybe in the departments that were involved with what happened in the previous incident.
Right. So we're going to just take that incident. We're not going to deconstruct that incident per se, but the incident highlights a lot of things that happen when racism is brought to the forefront and, certain things happen. We can start with the thought of intent versus impact. We can start with that. One of the arguments that often comes up, and one of the things that happens is that often gets knee-jerk reaction is, I feel like you said that like that was a racist thing to say, or I feel like that was really offensive to me. And then the first thing that comes up is, well, that's not what I meant to do. And then kind of brushing it away and moving on.
Mm-hmm.
As if what your intention was is what's important versus how it impacted someone.
Well, I don't have to caveat it. That's very natural culturally.
Mm-hmm.
Culturally for us, I can't say culturally the whole world, but culturally in the United States, it's part of our DNA to think about intent and not so much about impact.
Right.
And if you think about the mantra of individualism,
yes,
right? That in itself pulls away from societies that are more communal oriented. When you're talking about communal spaces, it's always going to involve the impact on each person there.
Right.
So,
right.
I was just throwing that in.
Yeah. So when we're looking at this case study, that was one of the things that happened, right? It's like there's intent and there's impact. What happens is that intent can be informed by bias.
Mm-hmm. It is informed by bias.
So when you're unaware of that bias that you hold and the intent and what you do, then and someone says to you that the impact was this to me,
right,
and you simply say, well, that's not what I meant to do, right? It becomes your word against mine, and it's very hard to prove someone's intent, but and dismiss someone's the impact.
Dismiss someone's the impact on someone.
The impact on someone else. And so it's really important when we're looking at something like that, when we're looking at intent versus impact, to understand that there's a huge gap between the two. And that when someone says to you, that hurt me, or you hurt me, it is not for you to say, well, that's not what I meant to do. It's for you to say, oh, how did I hurt you, and how can I do better? And this is not just, we're not just talking racially, we're talking about any relationship, right? Even if I were to say to you, Lori, that thing, remember when you said XYZ, that really hurt my feelings. And if you said to me, well, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings when I said that, and then moved on, where does that leave me?
And I think in that exchange, if we're talking about both people in the exchange, recognizing where we are right now, in this country, as just the full mental zeitgeist of what's happening in this country.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that we both have to approach the situation with grace, even the person impacted. And what I mean by part of that is the person does have to say that was not my intent. They just have to say more.
Right.
But they do have to say, you know, the alleged perpetrator does have to say, my intent was not at all to hurt you. Now, I'm so sorry that it impacted you that way. How can I change it? How did that land that way? Because I don't even understand how it impacted you that way. How can we talk about it? But I do think it is important to talk about the intent, because I know, you know, to be honest, where I am right now, I'm thinking like, well, you all intend to, you know, be crazy right now.
Y'all all trying to. Yes,
and
absolutely. I do think that it is important to say that it wasn't my intention, but you just can't stop there.
you can't stop it there.
You can't just say, well, that wasn't my intention, sorry, and move on, because the sorry means nothing. Or even what else happens? Well, that's not what I meant to do. And I don't know why you think that I would think to do it that way. And that's
then
what I
it's
was.
total defensiveness.
Yeah. Then now the person who's been impacted now has to deal with your feelings
and make you
being
feel
all
better.
in your feelings and try to make you feel better. Right.
Right.
So it's about gaining a certain level of maturity in communication and saying, it wasn't my intent. I apologize for doing that. Help me understand how it impacted you and what I can do better. But not waiting for the other person, the person who's been impacted, to say, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it. You know, no, worry about it, fix it, and let's do better.
Right. I'll give you an example that happened to me in law school. It's a great example about how two sides to this racism and microaggressions and things of that sort, how they can butt heads and where you need to find grace to actually have a conversation. So there was this Asian guy, I don't remember specifically which country his lineage was from, at the law school, who I thought was very attractive. And he had bow legs.
Oh.
And exactly, right? So I was like, wow, that is so sexy. Yeah. Right. And Sadie, you know, in our family, I don't know if that's a Haitian thing or if it's our family thing, but we were always like, bow legs are so sexy. Mm-hmm. And you, Sadie, have benefited from that. But we'll keep it moving. And so I said this to him. Mm-hmm. At some point, I don't remember the details. This was many, many years ago. And I said to him, I was like, ooh, I like your bow legs or something like that. And I remember he gave me a strange look and kept it moving. And I don't remember how the exchange went. But then I went and told two of my girlfriends what had happened. And one of the girlfriends, she's Black, African-American, and the other one is Hawaiian, Asian from Hawaiian background. And they both looked at me in shock, like, oh, I can't believe you did that. That's so fucked up. That's so rude. I can't believe that's like racist. What? And I'm like, I was a deer in headlights. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, and I came to learn that bow legs was a stereotype that was used negatively towards Asians, towards Asian people, just like
really
just like you've seen some of the minstrel shows with Black people with the exaggerated lips and things like that. Or you'll see things with regards to Asian people with like exaggerated buck teeth or something of that sort. Right. Apparently, bow legs was a part of that.
Oh.
I had no idea.
Right.
But I will tell you this. I remember it to this day because there are a lot of stories I don't remember. I remember it because I felt so bad.
Right.
But what I felt worse about was that my two girlfriends, I felt like they kept attacking me. Right. Because I kept saying to them, from my culture, it's a beautiful thing. I had no intent.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
I had no intent. And I felt like they were attacking me as a person. And at that time, we weren't talking about, oh, I totally understand your intent, Laurielle,
Mm-hmm.
but here is how it probably impacted him.
Impacted. Right.
And we didn't parse out that conversation.
Right.
So I left feeling like I was attacked as a human, as my character.
Yes.
My character was attacked, and I had no way to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I had no tools, no way to fix it. I couldn't go tell him sorry
Mm-hmm.
because the way my two girlfriends had treated it, I had no outlet to fix it. They didn't
Right.
give me an outlet. So I
Right.
bring up this story to show, I'm not going to say that in a lot of times when you're talking about race and, you know, if you're breaking it down perfectly between black and white, that the intent is going to be similar to mine. But in a general sense, the intent in terms of I didn't mean to hurt you
Mm-hmm.
is something that people feel all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
And you deal with it by parsing out what has actually happened so that
Happened.
now we can find grace and say that maybe that's not your character. That
Mhm.
was an action. We all do actions every day
Right.
that are not indicative of our character, but we made a mistake. We didn't think through something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I like bringing up that conversation from both perspectives because I have felt both perspectives.
Yeah, and and that's not unusual, but it does have to be a place where both people are ready and willing to kind of parse that out. So if somebody brings it up to you, then they should be also ready to answer a few questions about why the impact was what it was to you. And so yeah, I mean, I could have totally done the same thing, especially because I do have bow legs, right?
Right.
And so
Mhm.
for me, it would just be one of those things that I just say, right? And it's so there in that situation also, it's not about bias. It's
Mhm.
simply about what happened at the moment and unintentional impact.
Right.
And it happens. And that's what people don't understand. Unintentional impact will happen.
Right.
I guarantee 100%. There's no way that everyone can know everything about every culture and everything that has been that is offensive to that culture. There's no way.
Right.
But
Right.
what you can do is be open and willing to learning and understanding when
Right.
something you have done has impacted a certain way, a person a certain way,
Right.
and
Right.
not negating it as invalid because it doesn't impact you in the same way,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And a lot of times I feel that that's kind of the response. Well, that's not what I meant. I'm sorry, and keep it moving. I don't understand why you would feel that way.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you probably don't. Let me explain to you why.
Right.
Okay. So that was the first thing that I thought of when I read that in terms of, intent versus impact. The second thing that struck me when I was going through that article was individually, we have knee-jerk reactions
Mhm.
to things like we know when we start talking about racism and things like that, it puts people right on edge, and there are a lot of instances where you can have a knee-jerk reaction. Well, I don't think that that's true, or well, that person is a really nice person. I don't think that you should be talking about them that way. They didn't mean to do that, or whatever it is, the knee-jerk reaction that comes before the thought actually can come.
Right.
And I felt, according to what I read, that that's one of the things that happened institutionally
Mhm.
with the school was knee-jerk reaction. It was like, oh shit, what are we going to do? Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this, without taking into consideration the nuances that were present,
Right.
in this whole situation. So what are your thoughts on that?
Right. I agree. So my reading of just a very large scale
God.
of what happened is she was sitting there, as you said, a janitor from across the way saw her, and it was protocol for, instead of him approaching her and asking her why she's there, it's protocol for him to call campus police, who then came and questioned her. And I think a lot of times we would call that a microaggression, where it's like, why is the police here? And the impact, right, as the Black person is like, this is really extra.
This is
and
extra.
You know that it doesn't happen with other people, the extra, the little extra. And so, yes, so then she goes on to Facebook. And then from there, almost immediately, the school president, I think, put somebody on suspension. And then immediately apologizing to the Black women. And we're going to give all these people bias training and so forth. And it, from what I saw, from what I read, it seemed unexamined, which, is a knee-jerk reaction that I think we should expect to come along very often.
Yeah.
Coming in the future and in the near future, because you have a lot of people on pins and needles who feel like, I don't know the right answer.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, my partner and I, we always talk about, well, just don't be a douchebag. But that aside, just in a general sense, people are walking around on pins and needles right now. And so I could very easily see someone who's accused of perpetrating an event just wanting it to go away quickly and just wanting to just do the first thing that comes to mind. And unfortunately, as we adjust to a new normal, and we need a new normal.
We do.
And as we adjust to a new normal, that's going to be a pitfall that a lot of people fall into. And unfortunately, as you said, in this case, it was on an institutional level.
Yep.
So it affected the whole institution, and they're feeling the repercussions right now, where one of the things that seemed a little weird was that bias training was instituted for a particular group of people. And so they felt singled out. If you're interpreting it as, oh, you need racism training because you're racist, you're gonna feel singled out. And it's
like what you were saying. It was how you felt that your character was attacked, right?
Yeah,
it's the same thing. They feel like their character is being attacked, and so I have a whole other thought on that training thing, but you can finish what you were saying.
Actually, no, that was mostly what I wanted to talk about.
So there are two things I want. Well, one thing I want to talk about right now. You said that it was protocol.
Yes.
At the school to do certain things.
Right.
If we examine protocol at many institutions, many of them are based in bias and racism. The protocols, right? Because they do not take into consideration how it will impact marginalized communities. It only takes into consideration the majority community that is, that's present. And so so a lot of institutions actually really do need to review their policies, procedures, and protocols so that is not something that's happening, so that you don't have somebody calling the police on a Black person who's just trying to live. Right. Because here's the thing too, when you said that and I thought about it, is that it may be protocol, but if she were white, might that janitor have gone up to her and bucked protocol?
Is protocol a cover for, is it a cover?
Yes. Is it because if you think about it, there are things that, it's like, oh, well, this is how it's supposed to go. These are the rules that are in place. But you know what? We're just going to do this. Right. Right. Because, and so a lot of times when that back room thing happens, it happens among white people. Mm-hmm. And then the rules apply
to everyone else.
Right. Right. So if you consider that maybe had she been sitting there, but she was a white person, and the janitor might have come up to her at that point in time, because we also know that our skin is our weapon. And so he might not have felt weird coming up to her and
Right.
talking to her and saying to her, I don't think that you're supposed to be in here because
Right.
ABC. And then she could have said, oh, okay, I'm going to go. But when it's someone else, then you go,
Right.
well, the protocol is,
Right.
right?
And that's
And
what bias is about, right?
yes, that's exactly what bias
That's
is
exactly
about.
what it's about. And that person will actually never know.
They would never realize that that's why they did it the way they did it.
Right. Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
They wouldn't,
Absolutely.
which is why if there is something in place, it should be in place for everybody.
Right.
Right? It should be in place for everybody. But we know that that doesn't happen. That's why it's like there are laws that need to be made, but at the same time, we know that there are people who are going to buck those laws, who are going to, not follow those laws in ways that you would never imagine because
Mhm.
because you don't have the biases or you don't have the creativity,
The creativity.
that they have. So that was one thing. My second thing was about training. I have a really hard time when institutions go straight to training.
Okay.
Because like you said, I feel like it alienates the employees. It alienates the people that it's supposed to be helping because they're feeling as if, well, they're thinking that, we're this. I'm not that.
Right.
I'm not racist. I don't do that, right? And unless they already have an idea that they hold biases, it's going to offend them. So it's kind of like,
Right.
is that the first thing you should do?
And I can tell you this, like, at least for when I worked in corporate, so that's, over, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
That, and I think this is, it might be a New York thing, it might be an American thing, but whenever there was training, there were certain kinds of training called soft skills training. And the people that I worked with, like my classmates, we call them classmates because we all started working in the same year.
Right.
There was this perception of soft skills. They would call it soft skills training. There was this perception that it was not necessary, that you didn't need it, that it was like inferior to the other training. Like, oh, we have technical skills training and we have this, and all of these things matter, but how you interact with the client, how you interact with your fellow colleagues, things that are appropriate to say and do in a professional sphere, those were called soft skills. And when I tell you, those were like the poo-poo, it was always like, or it was just that thing that you could just skip, like it was not important. And that always caught me as a huge problem in the corporate world, because you had all these managers that were moving up the ranks, people who were moving up the ranks, going to manager, being a director, based on their technical skill, but they shit for managing. And that's part of soft skills, right? You have to know how to actually interact with another human and do it effectively. And those are what they called soft skills. And so it was a problem I noticed in the corporate world. And this gets lumped in the same thing when you talk about bias training. That's all I hear in 2 seconds. It gets lumped right in. Oh, racism training. Oh, okay. Like, I guess if I don't have to go over on my lunch 2 hours, then I can maybe make it, or can you send me the notes? Like,
yes,
it's just,
yes, it is.
Yeah, there are a lot of layers that feed the system.
Yes, exactly. They do feed the system, and it's so true. Soft skills training is not taken as seriously as training that is directly related to the job that you're doing. Which is why, in order for a company to actually make a difference in their culture, it all needs to be tied into the job that you're doing.
Right.
It all needs to be tied into the outcome that is desired.
Right.
Right. So you have to create this culture.
Right. You have to marry social responsibility in the corporate culture. You have to.
Yeah.
Have to.
Right.
That has to be the next evolution of the corporate world.
Yeah. It's not a question. for all the reasons. It's not a
Yeah.
question. It's definitely must happen because as more and more companies begin to realize the institutional racism that they have inherited, right? Because
Hmm.
they've inherited the ways of doing business that were very old and that were put into place. And that is what it was built on, right?
Hmm.
So when they begin to look at, it's kind of like when people say, oh, well, why do you do it this way and you don't do it that way? And, oh, it's like that. That's how we've always done it.
Right.
Oh, you
I'm
started
like,
doing
that
that
is
in
never an
1920?
acceptable answer. I'm like, I never understand that response. I really don't. It doesn't compute for me.
Oh,
Like,
you
that's
started
just the
doing that
beginning of a response because we've always done it this way. And
and
have you always gotten the results that you want?
and have you reviewed it at all as things have evolved?
Right.
Right? No, we've always done it this way.
Are we
Really,
still getting the results we want? I thought this conversation about us getting new results.
right.
That's what this whole
Growth,
conversation is about.
results, evolution. So they have to examine we've always done it this way. This is how our company works. And, I mean, here's an example. Henry Ford started Ford with black cars. All of his cars, you could have any color you wanted as long as it was black.
Huh.
Had they continued that way, do you think that they would still be around? Right? I mean, had they only said any color you want, except for it has to be black. And then another car company comes and says, hey, you can have any color you want, like really any color you want. Who do you think people are going to go to?
Right, right.
So it's a matter of understanding the environment that you're growing in. And this
Mhm.
environment is shifting and changing. The demographics are
Right.
changing, the mindsets are changing. And so you have to change with it. And
Mm.
you have to take that big behemoth of a company, however big it is and however small it is, you have to take that company to a new culture
Mhm.
that will support this new endeavor. And that's not to say that you're getting rid of all the people that are there. It's to say that you are making clear what the company parameters are, where this company is going, why it's going in that direction, how everybody matters in this direction. And those who don't fit will naturally call themselves out.
Mhm. 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 I think what's necessary in this point in time is, and you've spoken about this to me before, is a growth mindset.
Yes.
Right? You've spoken about the growth mindset versus I'm not sure what static,
The
I don't know,
fixed.
the fixed mindset. And where we are as a society right now is if you're not willing to grow, you're going to have a lot more pain and you're going to hold the rest of us back from moving forward as a whole, as a group. But right now the growth mindset is necessary, and I think what's going to become more and more apparent is that people who have always thought of themselves as woke, as progressive, as such and such, they also will be required to grow. And they are going to be giving some of the pushback that we don't expect. Because it's one thing to say, I believe I'm this type of person. But if you're not willing to understand that you don't know everything, then you're going to be just as offended as the white supremacists, because you're going to take a challenge that you don't understand as a character assassination.
Right.
So you're going to be just as offended as the white supremacists.
Right.
And that's not who you are. You're actually not that person, but now you're going to get lumped in. And you might even lump yourself in because you're so defensive. But that's not the facts of where you are. The fact is that we're all entering a space that we don't know.
Right.
That we don't understand how it's going to work, how to adjust killing white supremacy. You know what I'm saying? How do you actually move the needle of white supremacy? It's an adjustment, and it's a painful adjustment for every single person, but more so painful for those who don't have a growth mindset and who think that they're outside of having to have that mindset. Right. No, I'm already a good person, so I don't have to. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening with the Bill Maher's of the world. But We don't have to go there.
I haven't watched Bill Maher in a long time, but yeah, I mean, it's true. It's, yeah, you definitely have to understand. Someone asked me on a podcast, they said, what didn't you know before you started this that you wish you knew?
Mm.
And my answer was that I was always going to have to be learning something new,
Mm.
constant learning.
Right.
So I buck the word woke.
Right.
I don't go for woke because woke is
Mhm.
like an instance in time.
And it's like a badge.
Yeah, I have gotten
right.
here. I am now woke. I'm awake.
Now
I'm good.
now the work is done.
I realize that this work is not that. There is always something more to learn, always something more to adjust, so much to dig into, because so many things work into each other. There's, like I said, there's no way for us to know everything there is to know about all the people we can offend and all the ways that we can
And also,
be
yeah, and
offensive.
also as humanity moves forward, right? That in itself, change in itself means that you have to continuously learn.
Yeah.
So, the way that we interact today so much online is not how we were interacting 20, 30 years ago.
Right.
And so that changes. Oh, now you have to be a little more careful about what you say online.
Yep.
And the thing is, when people say careful, it's not, oh, now you have to be more careful about your douchebaggery. No, it's that you always have to recognize your audience. Something that I say in front of my partner sounds different than when I say in front of somebody else. When I say in front of somebody else, I sound like a douchebag. When I say it in front of my partner, we're having a discussion and we know what we've talked about before. We know what we're talking about after. And we also know the person's character.
Yeah.
Maybe what you said right now was out of pocket, but I know your character.
Right.
So I'm going to bring it up. We've done that before in me and my partner in conversations with each other, where I said, you know what? I think when you say this, it's not going to land well anymore. Back in the day that used to land, but it doesn't really fit right now. Like it's actually not funny anymore.
Right. It's
and
kind
there's
of
a
like
reason
watching.
It's not funny because we've moved on from certain stereotypes and bigotry is used a lot in comedy. But when it's unfunny, that means we've fully moved on.
We've moved on, right? Because there are certain, TV shows or movies that you'll watch now and you'll go, ooh, ouch. Like, right. We were watching this. We were listening. Like this was okay, right?
Right.
And then there are some that we'll watch again and we'll go, wow, why are we still having this conversation in 2020? Like, why is this still relevant now? Right. So it's not everything, but it definitely does. It has to grow past and you have to kind of go, yeah, no.
So we'll always be learning. We'll always be growing.
Yes. And if we're not, then that's on us. Mm-hmm. That's on us. We have to always be learning, constantly be allowing ourselves to grow. And businesses have to do the same. So businesses have to incorporate new cultures. They have to create these new cultures. And that's not to say it's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, but it also has to come from the top down. It cannot be a groundswell up. It will never work that way. It has to be that person up at the top says, okay, this is what needs to happen. And this is how these things need to correspond to this new culture that we're building. And we're going to support this by having someone that's dedicated to this. And we're going to support this by putting in the programs that are dedicated to this, right? It's going to cost time, it's going to cost money, and it's going to cost because it's going to cost you employees. Some people are going to be like, I'm out of here.
I don't get it. Right.
I don't get it. I don't want it. I'm out. And other people are going to be like, great. But for me, I think equity and inclusion come before diversity. Mm-hmm. That's my feeling about it. There needs to be a culture of equity and inclusion where people's needs and people's voices are important, no matter who they're coming from, and then diversity will follow.
Right.
No?
Agree. Agreed.
Diversity will follow. So, as I was looking at this situation, that was, some of those things were glaring at me. Like I was going, wow, it's always this, oh my gosh, what do we need to do? Oh my gosh. It's like putting out all these little fires all the time instead of looking at the overarching, how's your institution doing with
Right.
with
Right. I mean,
having
I got the impression that the school president started making decisions without even talking to
right,
the person that was impacted.
right.
That's weird.
Right. So you don't even know.
That's weird.
Okay, so but here's where this falls into. Here's where this falls in. Where people think they know you better than you know yourself. Oh, I know she must have felt this way, so I'm going to do this thing to fix that thing that I think that she felt, without taking into consideration the actual thing by talking to whoever is impacted. Right. And, and that's one of the things that happens a lot, is that a lot of times white people feel that they know so much. Remember, they woke. They know so much that now they feel that they want to speak for a marginalized person, a marginalized group, because they have all this information without ever actually talking to the person to see how it actually impacted that person.
Right.
Because honestly, I'm more than my Black skin.
Mm-hmm.
My experiences are far more than just my Black skin. So it may be impacting me not only because I'm Black, but because of something else, right? And it may not even be impacting me because I'm Black, but because of something else.
Right.
But how do you know that if you're not talking to me and asking me? If you just think you just woke and we're here and we know and we're gonna, it's the white savior thing. That's a whole other conversation. Right?
Right. Yep.
Those things, I feel like institutions, especially institutions of education, they need to set the pace in curriculum, in policy, in procedure, in protocol. They kind of need to set the pace for a changing world, right? They can't keep doing it the way they've been doing it.
And I think something that I've heard you say before, instead of going directly to bias training or something like that, the first thing the person, whoever's at the top, needs to do is go put themselves in training. Yes. Go start at the top. Start at the top. Start with you, the president, my COO, my CFO, my this and that. The whole executive board is going to go do bias training.
Right.
You do it.
Yes.
You have the experience. You decide how it felt, how it impacted you, how worthy it was. Because also you might be getting a training that's not even, the trainer is not
that what you
worthwhile.
Want.
Right. They don't have the value that they thought, that they don't have the value that you thought they were going to have. And so you put yourself with first and you see where the kinks are. Oh, I need to hire a new person, or this person was great. Or this company was great, I should say. And then from there, now the whole executive brainstorm. Okay, now how does this impact the institution that we're running? Don't go try fixing everybody else. Start with yourself at the top. That's what that school president should have done. She should have been like, oh my God, one of my students suffered a microaggression. I'm going to go get therapy. That's what she should have done.
It's true. Right. From the top down.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's how you change a culture.
That's how you change a culture. That's what I was talking about, that company that said, oh, our CEO was involved in the September 6th problems, but that has nothing to do with us. 6th? I was like, January 6th. Oh, that has nothing to do with us. I was like, oh, my
sure goodness. It doesn't, but I don't want to go visit
what? Let me tell you something. Y'all put out the wrong message. You should have said what you should have done was,
he was always crazy. We kicked him out tomorrow.
What you should have done was said, our CEO was involved in the January 6th insurrection. We have terminated him. The board has put him out. We are looking for a new leader, and we are doing X, Y, and Z or whatever. Because I guarantee that man is at the top. Your culture is for shit.
Right. Yeah.
Because it comes from the top.
100%.
I mean,
100%.
we just freaking survived.
100%. And I can tell you, as somebody who runs a company that deals with sex work, it comes from the top.
Yep.
And it's not always easy. You have to take responsibility. We've had people in our company who didn't follow the culture that I was setting.
Right.
And if I didn't do anything about it, then you know what? That is the culture that I intend.
Yes.
But I had to get him out of the company in order to preserve what I knew was important in the culture of the company.
Yep.
So from experience, if I allow it to happen, that's who I am.
If that's your CEO and that's what he's doing, you're telling us who you want to work with. You just told us who you want to work with.
You told us who you hire.
Who you hire.
Who you go
told
to
us what kind of
the water fountain, water bubbler. Who you go after work drinks with.
What kind of culture you have. Everything. You just told us so much because you didn't act in a way that was decisively opposite to that type of culture. And so it's like, oh, you're just trying to put a Band-Aid on that bullet hole. I don't know if that's going to work, but you can try it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's it. I think
talking about school institutions in general, but schools, it's going to be a very interesting thing to follow because I'm also following right now the story about University of Texas. In Austin, what they're going through with regards to their school song.
Oh.
And just watching these institutions having to, just watching them dealing with their past and dealing with their present and connecting the two. And it's not going to be, the adjustments are not going to be easy and they're not going to be obvious. I would like to say they're obvious. Just get rid of that racist shit and get new, but it's not really obvious.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh, in at the University of North Dakota where Travis went, their mascot was an Native American. What were they? The Chiefs? Something I don't remember. And a few years ago, they were in the process of trying to change that because something came up and now they were like, oh, we got to change it.
Right. Yeah.
But there was a stadium, hockey stadium that had been built for them by this man. And this man passed away, but he left the money for it, stipulating that they never change the mascot or the whatever it was. I was like, wow. So they were really having to, so they had legal shit to deal with. Because it wasn't just, okay, we really need to change this. It was like, okay, we need to change it, but we also need to make sure that we can keep
question though, like why? Say, as long as they keep
it? Yes, because there had been murmurings, I think, before he passed on, right? About the need to change that and that it was, it was racist.
So even more so pointedly.
Yes, pointedly.
And that's exactly what's happening at UT Austin. Is it UT? I don't know if it's UT. They're very careful about how they, say their school name correctly. So I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend anybody. But because those are two different schools. Right. What was I saying? Oh yes, that was one of the things that came up was that donors started threatening that they're going to pull money.
Right.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's their go-to. It's been the go-to forever, right?
Well,
Let's use our money.
if you've got
Let's use
money,
our
then
money to
buy,
redline, to this, to that,
you
to
can buy,
exclude people. But they're dying off.
you can buy it. Yep.
But they're dying off. Not to say there's not a new generation of
Right. Because they raise
like,
some kids too.
right. But I will say a good chunk is becoming irrelevant.
Right. We could get into a whole other thing because it just blows my mind that people would be so invested in,
Right.
in making sure that they're
But I understand it, Sadie, because it's their identity. It's saying, or let's say, let me correct it. It feels like an attack on their identity.
right.
And so that's their perspective,
Right.
is that if I don't have this, I don't have me, I don't have anything.
Right.
And so that's why it's such a fervent fight.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of existential to them. But it's like, if you just turned your head
Just a degree to the right
and changed your perspective, you would see a whole new world.
Whole new world. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
But you get entrenched in,
I swear, I learn stuff every single day that makes me go, whoa, how come I didn't know that? Right?
Right.
And not just about Black culture, people, but about just a lot of things. The way different words, phrases, names, places, just so much stuff. As long as as being a sponge that I'm being now, trying to take all this information, I'm learning like so many different things. And I go, man, but yet there are people out here who think that they just know. And that's it. That's all they need to know. They know everything they need to know, and they're good.
Right.
Woo.
And I'm very insulted for you to tell me that I need to learn something more.
Learn something new.
Yeah.
Yes. It's so the schools are gonna have to start for sure. They're definitely gonna have to start and be better. And as more companies are getting into the flow of not just being performative about it, but actually being concrete about it.
Yeah, and I think these schools too, I don't know the behind the scenes of what they're doing, but I would venture to say that one thing they should be careful of is not just to consult Black students or students of color, or just students, is my point.
Yes.
They really need to, if there are professors there of color who have a certain perspective, they really need to not just have just the student perspectives.
Right. It should be a well-rounded perspective and have different groups, because campuses are made up of so many different groups. And so, yeah.
But also because I find that younger people, generationally, we all think differently. Yes. But all the generations are being affected, right? Even though the student is the one currently being affected, every generation is being affected. So I think the conversation that a student might have might be too far out of the realm for the other stakeholders in the issue.
Right.
So that's why you need different generations of stakeholders
to
talking
translate.
about, to translate.
You need translators at every generation. So this generation speaks to that generation says, oh, I got you, and goes to the next one. The next one goes, yes, and then goes on up and up and in through.
Because I can see very plainly that the younger generation, their perspectives on race are different than mine, and different in a sense of just at their core and at their cellular level, because they've grown with a different environment.
Yeah.
So I fully respect that. And I also know that we need to all, we have to be translators for each other.
Well, do you have any final words for our audience, Lori? Because I'd love to hear from you.
I don't. I guess one thing I would like to say, the story that we were talking about from Smith College, I do want to point out that Sadie and I haven't delved into the story because our conversation really wasn't about that person's unique story. And so I just want to apologize if it comes off as we're not doing justice to that student's story or to the
Right.
college story. It really wasn't about them in particular. We were pulling out some subject matter that we thought would be interesting to talk about. So
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to disrespect what happened in that situation and
Right.
the people that it happened to, and people who still are, engaging with that and having, their life uprooted in different ways by it. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that people understand that there are a whole lot of different things that can be affected with even just one situation like that. There are a whole lot of things that come into play. And but yeah, we certainly don't want to speak directly to that situation because we don't know enough about that situation.
Right. So
And
we don't want to make it sound like we're downplaying
Right. anybody any
anybody.
impact to anyone
Right.
in that situation because
Right.
everyone's experience is their own, and
And we don't know about it.
we don't know enough about it. Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. We will I'm so glad that you did this with me, and we will do it again real soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, did you enjoy that episode? If so, please be sure to subscribe, download, rate, review, and share. It would also mean the world to me if you became a patron over at Patreon. The information is in the show notes. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.